Good morning, Darryl. How are you?
Good morning, Rabia. I'm really well, thank you. And it's nice to be back on the show again.
It's great to have you. And what a special topic. Secret gardens. Those little places. Well, what is the meaning of a secret garden for you, firstly?
I think the meaning of a secret garden for me is a place where you can just get away, relax, and just be yourself and just to chill out. Just a
Mm.
place.
Now, a lot of people may think, but I don't have the land I don't have a big yard. How do we get around that?
Yeah, look, I think you're correct. That's a very big misconception. A secret garden doesn't have to be or doesn't have to take up a big area at all. If you've just got a small little balcony, you can create something nice and quaint that'll do just well right there. Or just find a corner somewhere in your garden. You don't need to have acres. It just needs to be a small little place that is, like I said, quaint, that you're familiar with and that you feel comfortable in, and where you can basically just get away from the crowd and just spend some time to reflect.
Yeah. And, some people can, if they have a bigger garden, you might want to dedicate an area of the garden to it. If you don't, then a balcony will do, little spot on the balcony, right? Or indoors, some favorite places. I remember growing up, laying in the bathtub, and my mother always had all sorts of things hanging. There was plants hanging off the ceiling. There were plants on the edge of the bathtub. You're getting careful not to knock things over. But that's a good place to have a secret garden, don't you think?
Absolutely. As long as you are sort of surrounded by living matter, I think that's the important thing about it. If you just sitting on a balcony and there's nothing but bricks and metal and glass around you, it's quite a different experience compared to being in the exact same surrounding, but surrounded by plants, greenery, flowers, leafy plants. It really makes a difference to the atmosphere. And I think it has a calming effect.
It does have a calming effect. There have been various studies done on the impact of the color green on the human brain. And these bioengineers talk about having green in your office and how looking at green helps to just kind of calm the mind. And it makes sense because it connects you back to nature. So for the listener at home, tell us, send us a little message and let us know, do you have a secret garden? Do you have a place of contemplation, perhaps on your balcony? The number to WhatsApp us on is 060-904-1056. And if you don't have, and you would like to create one, where would you ideally see yourself creating that? So let's talk, Darryl, about now somebody who's at home. Maybe they have a garden, maybe they don't. How would they kind of start off saying, I want to set up a little secret garden? What do they need to consider?
Rabia, I think the first thing you need to consider is a space, and a space that you'll feel comfortable in. It doesn't have to be a big space, but it really just needs to be a space that allows you some peace and quiet and to contemplate. And, if you feel comfortable in that space, you can then create the garden around you.
Yeah. And of course, you've got to consider things like lighting as well. Where the sun comes up, if there is sun, there has to be sun to grow stuff unless you're doing an indoor grow.
Absolutely. So, look, some people are mornings people and some people are afternoons people. Okay. Me, myself, okay, I like to go and spend time in the garden in the afternoon. Having said that, also, I don't want to basically be sitting there with the sun shining in my eyes. So the light is very important. And I think also the time of day that you decide that you're going to spend the most time in the garden is also very important.
I was thinking, though, more for the plants than for us, because they really need that sun in order to grow. So it might be a good idea to stand out there in that little area and maybe just see which spot is hotter and which spot is not hotter.
Absolutely. For me, obviously, like I was trying to say, is I think our personal comfort is requisite, because once we're personally comfortable there, we'll obviously spend more time there. And then 100% correct. You then basically want to organize your garden around plants that will be conducive to that environment itself.
So What about then? So we're looking at the lighting and maybe beyond lighting of the sun. Maybe there are lighting considerations one can have in the garden. I'm thinking, everything from little fairy lights to what are some ideas that our listeners could use?
Robbie, again, I think it depends how much time you spend in the garden. I think if you spend your afternoons, early evenings in the garden, that's great. It's a time of the day where you can reflect back on things. For most people who have 9-to-5 jobs, it's a time of day where you don't have a pressing appointment happening. It's a time to unwind. And little solar lights are great. Another thing, and especially with Christmas coming up at this time of the year, is you can get those sort of solar stringed Christmas tree lights. They sell them in a lot of days, and it's something that you can use throughout the year. You can wrap them around a tree, or if you've got a small balcony, you can put them in your balcony. And then obviously as the sunlight fades, they create a beautiful glow, very nice atmosphere.
Yeah, so repurpose things from the krushmush and rather use them in our gardens. Absolutely. I love that solar lights idea. There's so much variety of solar lights nowadays. And I've also seen some other lighting recently, which are these LED motion detector lights, and they used to be quite expensive, but you can get them for next to nothing nowadays. And just kind of as you walk into the room, poops, the little lights go on, and you can position them on the wall and on the floor and all sorts of places if you're indoors. So talking about lighting, now let's talk about structure. What kind of things can we consider if we're putting together a little secret garden outdoors versus indoors? What might be the differences?
Robbie, I think the most important thing is how much space you've got. So if you've got just a limited amount of space, primarily your structure wants to be more vertical than horizontal. So sort of using a lot of creepers. Creepers are great because you can obviously put them in pots up high against a wall or whatever, and then you can let them grow down. Alternatively, if you've got a lot more space, you can sort of use more potted plants, plants that basically start off at a low height, maybe 300, 400 millimeters in height. And then as you get further out in the garden, you would basically create or use higher growing plants so that it creates a nice atmosphere, and it creates a nice undulating atmosphere out.
I like what you said about having the plants up high and then cascading down, because when I think of climbers, I always think you've got the pots on the bottom and then you've got your trellis up and things are climbing up. But why not the other way around? And speaking of that, just on a completely different side note, I saw recently people growing tomatoes upside down, exactly that way. So they have these hanging baskets, but the tomatoes are literally growing from under. And so you're kind of picking these little cherry tomatoes. What a lovely idea. And yes, you could have cherry tomatoes and strawberries growing from the ceiling and trellises, as you say. A lovely one, of course, to consider might be fragrances. We could incorporate fragrance into that scented garden, like jasmine. If you're wanting evergreen, dear listener, the star jasmine is great. If you're not too bothered about dead leaves and you're wanting more abundance of flowers, maybe in the jasmine family, the jasminoids, which just creeps all over everything. But Darryl, you mentioned also the structural elements of plants, and I know you spoke. We spoke about this show yesterday, and you said something about a golden plant in Australia. Tell us a little bit more about that plant.
Yeah, it's called a golden cane. Basically, the palm, and they grow very quick. They grow very rapidly. You normally would sort of buy them in a nursery, and they'd be about 300 or 400 millimeters high. And if you keep them in a pot, they can probably get to about 1,500 millimeters. So they grow quite nicely. And obviously, as they get bigger, if you keep them in pots, you can just move them further out away from you as your garden starts to expand. And
do they take up a lot of space?
No, they don't take up a lot. They don't take up a lot of space at all, and they're really hardy plants. They don't need a lot of watering. They can take quite a lot of abuse, if you want to put it that way. Hardy abuse. They're pretty tough. Another Another thing about the plants, and just going back to what you mentioned earlier when we were talking about lighting, is a lot of people, when they light their gardens, they kind of have the lights out in the open. But if you use ambient lighting, if you take your lights, your LEDs, or whatever they are, and you actually hide them or place them under the plants so that the lights shine on the plants instead of shining out in the open, it really can create a really calming, soothing, and beautiful effect.
Oh, very magical. You can imagine, I'm thinking as you speak, I'm imagining these downlighters and shining off of the leaves. And of course, if you have different colored leaves, then it's beautiful. The listener at home, you may remember a good few weeks back, possibly months back, we spoke about moon gardens and how you can use different colored leaves, the grayish leaves, the bright greens, and have the moonlight reflect all off of those. And of course, you could have those lights reflect off of those. Solar lights are great. Now, something about solar lights, though, especially if you buy the cheapy ones, you find that they just kind of die. I've got a little hack for you. If your solar lights are dying, replace the batteries. Because what they actually have is they have these little rechargeable batteries on the inside that gets charged by the sun. But normally these things come from Congolese and Chongolese and all of these. And what happens is the batteries are very low quality. So that's why your solar lights don't last. So there's a tip for you. Get a very, cost-effective solar light, but then change the battery. We have a message from Fatima Effendi. Happy 1st of December and a lovely Sunday. Beautiful picture of a cup of tea and some beautiful flowers. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you for sending this to us. So going back to our secret gardens, what about, so we've spoken about fragrance, we've spoken about lighting. What about bringing in interesting elements? What could you bring in to the garden that's not specifically plants to just make it more comfortable, warm, cozy?
Well, Rabia, I actually have two secret gardens where I live here. One of them is probably an area which is about 6 meters by 4 meters, so it's a reasonably large size area. It's under an olive tree, and I've actually put a day bed there. So it's a nice place to just lie back and relax.
Wow. And you can just lay there in the sun or lay there in the evening, I suppose, but not under an olive tree. Oops, olives falling on your head. We've got a few messages that have come in from Zarina. She sent us pictures of her comfort zone in the afternoon, and she's actually done exactly what we're saying. So she's got an area where there is a fruit tree. So I'm looking at lemon trees. I'm looking at a creeper. Is it that creeper? She's got some seashells suspended as well, and then a little table with some of the pot plants, so you could really make it look lovely, pots. And so a day bed is a wonderful idea. So I'm just getting this picture. You've got a day bed, that olive tree. Have you got lights hanging in it as well?
Yes, we actually have some LED lights in it, which obviously switch on at night time. There's also a wind charm there. So when we get a little bit of wind, you get that beautiful little, the beautiful tingles that it makes. It's really beautiful. However, having said that, not everybody has a space for a day bed. So
Yes.
you really comfortable. So my recommendation would be, if you don't have that kind of space, or if a day bed is just too much of an investment or something, just get a deck chair. And if you deck chairs and a small little round table, makes a great place for two of you to hang out and have sundown, a nice orange juice in the evening, and just relax, absorb the atmosphere, and have a chat.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Put your feet up. So something to sit on or something to lay on, something to put your feet up on. And of course, it could be a place for quiet contemplation. And I find, we're thinking about vertical spaces in the smaller areas. We're thinking about larger areas like the one that you've got. You've got a great big tree then, that being a structural element. For those at home who maybe have a smaller space and you're wanting to make the space seem bigger, look to the outer area of the garden and raise that up. In other words, whether you're going to, if you've got a wall, you can have a creeper going along the wall to make it green, because green makes the eye kind of makes the wall fade from the eye. Or you can, as Darryl has done with his olive tree, you could actually have trees all around. I actually looked up that golden cane, and I see that we actually have them. And in fact, I have one in the garden as well. A message from Yusuf Patel that has come in. Assalamu alaikum. The mind is nothing but traffic of thoughts. Select your route carefully. Choose the flowery garden route, not the thorny one. Salams and dua, Yusuf Patel. What a lovely idea. Yes, of course, a place to think about it. Serena says the scent of the lemon is soothing. And then she also has lavender and the Mandela gold plant. So these are some lovely ideas. Of course, if you're wanting to go with roses, we are now in the summertime. So yes, you could still plant your roses. And, you know, there's something is especially beautiful about that. They call it the last roses of summer. Have you seen, Darryl, how as the summer comes to an end, there's nowhere near here, I mean, we're still in the thick of summer, the roses just get more beautiful. They get bigger, they're more fragrant. So we could incorporate roses.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And something to also just pay attention to when you are choosing a place in the garden is pests, i.e. more mosquitoes. It's something that can very often be overlooked, and there's nothing more menacing than sitting in your secret garden and
here comes the mozzie. It's ready for you. Do you know, interesting thing about mozzies? You see, I'm a fountain of all sorts of interesting information. For the listeners at home, you may think that mozzies see you. They don't. They actually have infrared think of infrared spy goggles, and these mozzies zone into things that vibrate red because they know that's heat. And so they're actually coming to you for your heat. And so they spot you. They spot you. Do you know what I find about mosquitoes also is you'll go into your bedroom, there's not a mosquito in sight. Folks, have you had this? I'll go into my room, not a mosquito in sight. You get into bed, Darryl, and the next thing you know, and you think, where? How? Like, how did you get in here? So I wonder what happens. Maybe they just hide away. We need to have a mosquitologist on the show to come and tell us. But tell us more then about, so you can have a seating, as you said, a day bed. What about these? Do you know what? On the balconies, I saw something yesterday at one of the streets, which was there's a strange noise coming up. Do you hear that? There's a strange ticking. There's not a mosquito. So we'll try to get that sorted out. The technician is on site over here. Another message has come in, relaxing in a sunroom in Konya, Turkey. So there you go. A sunroom is another beautiful place, another beautiful thing that you can have as a place for rest and relaxation. So we were saying about mosquitoes. Yes, they hone in. So what would you do then in an external garden to keep those mozzies at bay?
Robbie, I think one of the previous shows, you can actually plant mosquito repelling plants. That's one option. Another option, you can use permethrin, which is just a spray which will chase them away, or obviously any other insect repellent or a coil. It really just depends on your garden itself. Or unless your secret garden is in a nice windy or airy area, that'll tend to keep them at bay as well.
Yeah. For those at home who are wanting to know what some of those insecticidal plants are, so one of my favorites is lemon balm or melissa. It's also a stress busting plant. So you can take a few leaves, make a cup of tea, sit in your special secret garden and de-stress. And on that note, we've got to de-stress by going to some adverts. So if you'll stay with us, don't go away. We're going to be right back with Green Thumbs Up after the ad break.
jokes, Rob. Yeah, is that right?
There's one of my dad jokes. You know that. Or mom jokes. There is a clickety in the background. I'm not sure where it's coming from. But secret gardens keep their secrets with privacy hedges. So, yes, you could build a hedge around your, yes, the sigh from Aswath, yes. Very corny, I know, but I mean, it's a gardening show. Of course, we've got to have corn. We really love corn. So, another one I've got for you is, why was the secret garden so mysterious? Because of all the hidden plots. Okay, so enough silliness now. We've spoken about some lighting, we've spoken about some landscaping. Any other tips that you have for us on secret gardens?
Yeah, look, like I mentioned earlier, space is probably one of the biggest issues that people have. And, I mentioned, like, for example, I have a day bed in my one secret garden, and the other I have a bench. The day bed is obviously something that I prefer. If you've just got a small little space and you have the area, or, if you're on a balcony or something, a hammock also can be really nice. I think the important thing in your secret garden is it needs to be a place where you feel comfortable and where you can relax. And, once you've got that part of the formula right, the rest is really simple.
Yeah, I would strongly recommend a little journal next to you so you can write down your thoughts and put them away for the day so you don't have to revisit them. So that is it from us in terms of secret gardens. So thank you, Darryl. Any closing remarks from you about secret gardens before we go?
Yes, I think the biggest joy that I get out of a secret garden is actually watching the plants flourish. So, you'll plant something there, and, you might come back in a week or two and, just seeing how much it's grown. It's a great pleasure that I get. And I find that I get a lot of relaxation just out of that aspect of it, is watching the greenery around you actually multiply and grow. And I find that very calming and soothing for myself.
It's the promise of time as well, I find, because you look at the plant and you see that these little buds going, and that expectation gives you hope for tomorrow, because that little bud is bound to turn into a flower. And we kind of all hope we're going to be there, because tomorrow is not promised to any one of us. So we all hope that that little bud is going to turn into a beautiful flower for us. So I can completely relate to the love of watching these plants flourish. Darryl, thank you so much for being with us and talking to us today about secret gardens.
And thank you, Robbie, for having me on the show again. It's been a great.
Very welcome.